No war in human history has killed as many people as disease. No weapon ever built. No army ever assembled. No bomb ever dropped. Disease is the deadliest force in the entire history of human civilization. And the diseases you are about to hear killed so many people, so completely, that they did not just end lives. They ended entire civilizations. They rewrote borders. They toppled empires. They changed the course of human history forever. These are the deadliest diseases in human history. And the world you live in today was shaped by every single one of them. Throughout human history, we have faced countless threats. Invasions. Famines. Natural disasters. Wars that consumed entire generations. But none of these come close to the destruction caused by infectious disease. Historians estimate that disease has killed more human beings than every war ever fought combined. More than every famine. More than every natural disaster in recorded history. And what makes disease so uniquely terrifying is not just the death toll. It is what disease does to the survivors. To their societies. To their beliefs. To their governments. To their understanding of the world. Every major disease outbreak in history left the world fundamentally different than it found it. The diseases you are about to hear did not just kill people. They changed everything. And their effects are still visible in the world around you today. In 1347, 12 ships arrived at the Sicilian port of Messina. When port officials boarded the ships, they found something that would haunt Europe for generations. Most of the sailors were dead. The few still alive were covered in black boils oozing blood and pus. The ships were ordered out of the harbor immediately. But it was already too late. Over the next 4 years, the Black Death swept across Europe with a ferocity that humanity had never experienced before and has never experienced since. It killed between 75 and 200 million people across Eurasia. In Europe alone, it wiped out between 1/3 and 1/2 of the entire population. Entire villages were emptied. Cities became graveyards. Bodies piled up faster than the living could bury them. In some regions, survivors simply dug massive pits and threw the dead in by the hundreds. The disease moved so fast and killed so completely that people had no framework to understand it. Many believed it was the end of the world. Priests fled their dying congregations. Doctors refused to treat the sick. Families abandoned their own children in the streets. But here is what makes the Black Death truly extraordinary. The world it left behind was completely different from the world it found. With so many workers dead, those who survived suddenly had tremendous power. They could demand better wages. Better conditions. Better treatment from the noble classes. The rigid feudal system that had controlled European society for centuries began to collapse, not because of revolution, but because of plague. The Black Death did not just kill half of Europe. It accidentally freed the other half. Smallpox is the only infectious disease in human history to have been completely eradicated by human effort. That achievement tells you everything about how terrifying it was. Smallpox killed an estimated 300 million people in the 20th century alone. 300 million. In a single century. More than both world wars combined. But its most devastating moment came not in modern times. It came in the 16th century when European explorers arrived in the Americas. The indigenous peoples of North and South America had never been exposed to smallpox. They had no immunity whatsoever. When the disease arrived with the Spanish conquistadors, it spread through native populations with a speed and lethality that was almost beyond comprehension. Historians estimate that smallpox and other European diseases killed between 50 and 90% of the entire indigenous population of the Americas. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. The Aztec, the Inca, the countless tribes of North America, were decimated not primarily by Spanish swords but by Spanish germs. Hernán Cortés conquered the Aztec Empire with just 500 men. Military historians have always puzzled over this. The answer is smallpox. By the time Cortés arrived, the disease had already killed vast numbers of Aztec warriors, administrators and leaders. The empire did not fall to Spanish steel. It fell to an invisible killer the Aztecs had no word for. Every disease on this list has a beginning and, in most cases, an end. Malaria has neither. It has been killing human beings for at least 50,000 years. And it is still killing them today. Malaria has killed more human beings than any other disease in history. Estimates suggest it may have been responsible for half of all human deaths since the Stone Age. Half of all human deaths ever. It killed Alexander the Great at the height of his power. It devastated the Roman legions and contributed directly to the fall of the Roman Empire. It stopped the Mongol invasion of Europe dead in its tracks. It killed more soldiers in every major war of the 19th and 20th centuries than actual combat did. Malaria shaped human civilization in ways so profound that we barely notice them anymore. It determined where cities could be built. It determined which trade routes were viable. It determined which empires could expand and which could not. For most of human history, any territory infested with malaria-carrying mosquitoes was effectively unconquerable, not by armies but by a parasite smaller than a grain of sand. The disease even shaped human genetics. The sickle cell trait, a genetic condition found predominantly in people of African descent, exists because it provides partial protection against malaria. It is a genetic adaptation that evolved specifically in response to thousands of years of malaria pressure. The disease literally changed human DNA. Today malaria still kills between 600,000 and 1 million people every year. Most of them children under the age of 5. In a world with space telescopes and artificial intelligence, we still cannot defeat a mosquito. In 1854, a doctor named John Snow did something that changed the history of medicine forever. He mapped the deaths from a cholera outbreak in London onto a street map. And he noticed something that nobody had ever noticed before. All the deaths clustered around a single water pump on Broad Street. Snow removed the handle from the pump. The outbreak stopped almost immediately. This single act, removing a pump handle in a London street, is considered one of the most important moments in the entire history of medicine. Because it proved for the first time that disease could spread through contaminated water. Not through bad air. Not through divine punishment. Not through moral weakness. Through dirty water. Before John Snow's discovery, cholera had already killed tens of millions of people across 7 major global pandemics since 1817. It spread along trade routes and shipping lanes with devastating efficiency. It arrived in a city and within days the hospitals were overwhelmed and the streets were filled with the dying. Cholera killed so fast and so visibly, victims died of dehydration within hours, their skin turning gray and their eyes sunken, that it created a specific kind of social terror unlike any other disease. Cities that reported cholera were instantly quarantined. Trade stopped. Economies collapsed. Governments fell. But what cholera ultimately gave the world was something extraordinary. The desperate need to stop it drove the creation of modern sanitation systems. Cities built sewers for the first time. Clean water infrastructure was constructed across Europe and America. Public health as a government responsibility was born directly from the horror of cholera. The clean water coming out of your tap right now. The sewage system beneath your city. The public health department in your government. All of it traces directly back to cholera. A disease that killed millions accidentally built the infrastructure that saves millions more every single year. 5 diseases. Hundreds of millions of deaths. And a world transformed beyond recognition by every single one of them. The Black Death freed Europe's working class from feudal slavery. Smallpox erased civilizations that had taken thousands of years to build. The Spanish flu created the modern global health system. Malaria shaped human genetics and determined the fate of empires. And cholera built the clean water infrastructure that keeps billions of people alive today. Every hospital, every sewer, every vaccine, every public health law, every international health organization. All of it was built in response to the diseases that came before. The world was not designed. It was not planned. It was shaped, over thousands of years, by invisible organisms that had no agenda and no mercy. We live in a world built on the graves of those who died before us. And the lesson that history keeps trying to teach us, is that it can always happen again. The question is never whether the next pandemic is coming. The question is whether we will be ready for it. Which of these 5 diseases do you think changed the world the most? The Black Death? Smallpox? Or something else entirely? Tell me in the comments, I read every single one. And if you want more hidden stories about how history really shaped the world we live in, subscribe and hit the bell right now. A new story drops every week. I will see you in the next one.